So it's time now for the panel, security panel, as mentioned. I will call to join me here at the round table Jean-François Audenard and Jérôme Robert from Lexi. Jean-François Audenard is working for Orange Business Systems. We also have Clément Oudot. Pascal Jacobi also is coming from Thales. Thank you very much for attending this security panel. We will talk about trends in security, then we will try to evaluate data security and data privacy, open to cloud security for, of course, mobility is important, and reshake the security aspects. And then we will open into the future with Internet of Things, with also new hacking which are arriving maybe, and new vulnerabilities, and how OW2 community can help enhance the security issues in IT. So first, during this open source week, we saw a lot of trends. We mentioned, of course, with OpenStack, the virtualization, cloud computing, and I would like to know with our panelists how these trends regarding cloud mobile security are changing the way organizations are now facing security issues. We would like to start, Jérôme, maybe?
So very briefly, 2 minutes, Lexi is a service company specialized in security. We are about 200 people, probably 2/3 of them being analysts. We're doing consulting, audits, training, and also we have a CERT organization, so doing incident response and vulnerability survey, basically. We are operating in Paris and mostly giving our services to big companies. Security mature companies, which are usually big companies. That's sufficient, I guess, for the introduction. Okay, so regarding your question, that was about the, tell me again, mobility.
Mobility, cloud, virtualization. We could talk also about SDN, which was mentioned this week at OpenStack.
Well, every single piece of your sentence is a pretty big subject, actually. Okay, maybe I'll start by the collaboration. I see it's a sub-subject of one of those. Collaboration is a very important topic, obviously, for organization. It's connected to mobility, etc. Everyone is more working on different devices on the same project. Everybody knows that. Now, the fact is that as an organization, I'm working with people that I don't manage, that I cannot work on their devices, I cannot manage the devices, I cannot implement security on their devices. And those people are working for my organization or for, which is not necessarily a company, an open source collaborative project, for example. You have to ensure the global security of your project without knowing exactly what devices is used to access your project and your platform. So I believe there's a big topic here in terms of cryptography, authentication, being able to ensure people are able to connect to your system, work with you in a world of trust. Trust is absolutely vital. And so cryptography, authentication are old subjects. I would not recommend anyone coming into the business to actually invest too much in those subjects by themselves. There are people who are thinking cryptography and authentication for like the last 30 years, okay? And they are pretty smart, and they didn't come up with the silver bullet for ensuring good authentication and group cryptography in this context. But the thing is, we have a new context here. It's not anymore cryptography for securing your data locally on your computer. It's cryptography applied to a collaborative world. And on that, in the fact that you need to take maybe old cryptographic, very well managed cryptographic concepts and adapt them to this new world, there's probably something very interesting to do.
Okay, Jean-François, one of the themes of Open World Forum was exactly that, taking back control for organizations within this cooperating world, multiple devices, cloud data. So how do you see this impact on security?
Yeah, thank you for being with us today. So my name is Jean-François Audin. I'm working for Orange Business Services. So we are part of the Orange France Telecom Group. We are around 20,000 people all over the world, helping our customer, mainly, let's say, big enterprise, to move and to help them to move to do their own digital transformation. We're delivering them, let's say, communication services. It may be network, IT, and of course, mobile. So coming back to your topic today, I think that cloud computing is really about trust. And what we can see on the market and when speaking and working together with our customer is that, let's say, since a couple of years, our customers are thinking about cloud in a different way. Before they were, let's say, jumping into cloud without, let's say, just grabbing the value from cloud computing. I need to move to the cloud. I need to move fast. Here is the cloud, and the cloud has been designed for. But right now, since 1 year and a half, I think that, let's say, companies are, let's say, they got the point about, let's say, the recent event and discovery around Edward Snowden. They now think about cloud computing security in a different way. Meaning that they are, let's say, selecting which cloud computing services they want to use, what kind of data they want to, and they agree, they're okay to send to the cloud, and to which cloud service provider. Meaning that, let's say, for non-sensitive data, they agree to use any, let's say, cloud computing services available on the market that do the job. And for other, let's say, really sensitive information, they are, let's say, either building some private cloud or selecting, let's say, a specialized and trusted cloud service provider that they know that they will take care of their data. And this is a major trend. And the second trend is around cryptography, security techniques. In fact, what we can see is that before companies were buying security technology, like, let's say, any other, without asking too much question, what we can see on the market is that even ourselves, as Orange, but also our customer, they are asking many questions around security, how security is implemented, what kind of technology is being used for, and around cryptography, let's say, the main requirement is openness. They don't want to use anymore any black box cryptography. We all know that, let's say, what has been done with around cryptography with RSA, with some, let's say, some backdoor, let's say it this way, in some random generator algorithm. So this is another major trend. Security needs to be really open, and I think that, let's say, open source technology is something that has a main role to play in this field.
Thank you. Clément, we think it's also a balance of usability and security for the end users. For instance, we don't want to memorize hundreds of passwords, so identity federation comes to the plan now.
Yes, what we see with cloud computing is that before we have a security and authentication and authorization inside the organization, inside the company, we can manage all our users in a single database, and we could have some single sign-on, but some internal single sign-on. With applications that are deployed in cloud, you need to find some ways to authenticate and control how your users will connect to the remote applications. So you have a cross security between your internal application, your internal users, and the application you're using in the cloud. So here we have a lot of cryptography. We have a lot of standards like SML and OAuth that allows us to build a strong security link between our internal users and our hosted applications.
Pascal, it's common say that security is everyone's concern, not only the developer problem or the operation administrators issues. How do you deal with this at Thales? Is it the case when you have a security project?
Well, yes, I'm in a special segment of the industry where obviously the need for security is even higher than anywhere else for obvious reasons. That means that first of all, we view all those open source packages as certainly not sufficient for what we need. This is the first thing to stress. I'll take an example that Clément has just talked about. In Identity Federation, they have the notion of identity provider. This is a key this will be at some point a key asset for the industry. But no one in the public sector will ever deploy such a thing if it is not completely proven that it has been developed without hoaxes. You have a process of certification, etc., etc. So the message here is probably that we are a long way ahead of something, which means the market demand as soon as you're talking about security concern type of organization, and that goes far beyond armies. We are talking about banks, we're talking about those things. So there is a lot to be done at that level. A second thing that we view at Thales, obviously, is that we are, as everyone, very excited about the cloud, etc., etc. But we really do think that the whole infrastructure is currently so fragile, so risky in terms of security, that there is a hell of a work to be done at that level as well. Just starting with virtual machine, strong isolation to say the least, but there are plenty of other subjects around that. Template authentication, literally hundreds of subjects around that, which are of concern for our customers.
But now there's a stress. I mean, a few years ago, probably security was a topic for security people. We like what we do, we want things to be secured, and we work for that. But basically, there was no stress from our customers, or except in very specific areas like yours. There was not much stress from the users or the consumers for having security guarantees into products, even for consumer products. And it's changing. Thanks to the NSA, I think we have to grant that to them. Thanks to the NSA and other big players like that, there's a big awareness about security, privacy in the public. And now, security can be part of a business value of a service. We all know Dropbox, for example. I see a lot of startups or pretty big startups, I'd say, creating new services, and their entire business value is around the fact that the end user is managing his own security and doesn't rely on a key which is managed by Dropbox or someone else. So security, even in a consumer world, for a service which is consumer-centric, sharing data with my mother or my grandmother, security can be central in the value proposition. But that's something, security can be a business, a real business, not by itself, but for the service it allows afterwards.
Probably there's not the same also notion of transparency from a part of the ocean, Atlantic Ocean, in the US and in Europe mainly. Do you see a need for more reporting, security reporting tools?
Clearly, I think that, let's say, whole service provider, it may be, let's say, telecom service provider, internet service provider, cloud service provider, need to be much more transparent about, let's say, how they are managing the security of their service, what they are doing, with whom, and let's say, giving transparency to the end user or to the companies that are selling their service to. Because, let's say, you cannot trust someone without having, let's say, some level of transparency of what is being done by whom, when, why. And this is a difficult topic because, let's say, providing too much transparency may, let's say, lead to some security problem because you never know, let's say, how far you can trust someone. It may be someone who is trying to, let's say, gather information in order to attack you. So this is, let's say, something that needs to be balanced. And but this is a really a topic that has been, let's say, cooked by, let's say, organization and even government. For instance, in France, with the Agence nationale de la sécurité des systèmes d'information, or for, let's say, the national leading authority regarding information system security. They wrote a document, guidance, some kind of guidance regarding cloud computing security, and transparency is part of the requirements. So the cloud service provider will have to give out, to send on their own information to their customer, to report incidents, security incident to their own customer. And this is really something that is not really being done right now in the industry. And we need to move into this direction directly.
We are seeing also an evolution in the regulations, and large companies and even medium-sized companies now needs to have a data protection officer in place for those questions.
Yeah, we have the European Union is currently working on the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, and this is, let's say, a new regulation so that will apply to every organization doing business within Europe. And basically, you will have to prove to European Union Data Protection Authority, in France the CNIL, that you're doing everything to ensure that the data you're managing and you're storing on behalf of the European citizen is well secured. You need to write documentation to put in place a security measure, and in case of, let's say, your security is being breached, you will have to notify the DPA, and you will have to notify directly the end user. This, we all know that it is already the case for the telco industry in France, but it will basically it will be the same for all organizations, let's say, dealing with personal data within Europe. So it's going to be extremely strong, and this is something that the industry player or any organization will need to find some, let's say, good, proven solution in order to meet all this new requirement.
Yes.
Just one thing about that. We should stress that this is going to be a compelling event for security business. If you're thinking about doing business in security, there's no better time than today, because those regulations, what you see in the US, the Target being hacked, Sony was not in the US, being hacked, etc. It happens in France, it happens in Europe, but it's not advertised, it's not public. Those guys in France and in Europe, they will have to make it public. That is a compelling event for getting more security in your organization. The public pressure is going to be so high at that point that the security industry will be stressed in the good way. Those guys will require better security, more product, more services. I'm happy for that because I'm selling services, but I think that's a very good opportunity.
Pascal?
Yes, just to say to go further on that, one of them, what we view at least in my company, but I'm sure this is elsewhere the case, is that the main push for security projects today is around security, cyber security, security operations center, hosted security, etc., etc. This is the first thing. This is probably the most significant area of growth today for the reasons you said, but for the reason that as soon as you're talking about exporting your data or collaborating, you're talking about being security conscious at a level which is much more than at the intranet level, etc., etc. This being said, what is also sure is that the technologies we deploy today are not yet at the level of what we need. For example, with a level of complexity, which makes it very difficult for organizations which are not very technological, and those companies will need that. So there is probably a hell of a work to be done at that level, and probably this is one of the dimensions where the open source community has not yet provided the level of tools that would be necessary, and there is probably a path for innovation at that level.
One key area of innovation we can see, let's say, and where the open source community may have an extremely important role, is around cryptography for software as a service. As Clément was speaking about, we can see on the market some, let's say, some technology, some startup that do provide some software in order to encrypt data being sent over, let's say, cloud service providers such as Dropbox, OneDrive, Google Drive, and so on, SharePoint, and so on. But this is only for, let's say, storage. Currently, if you do want to use, I don't know, pure software as a service, such as Salesforce.com, Gmail, or whatever web or pure software as a service, you do not have really on the market currently available any open source technology in order to transparently encrypt all the data you're going to send to the software as a service provider, and that will unencrypt in a transparent way the information when you're going to access it. And this is something that needs to be addressed, and that because, let's say, software as a service is the kind of cloud computing services end user, the mass market will use at first, because, let's say, only geeks or enterprise are going to use infrastructure or platform as a service. So, and currently, there are some kind of solution in order to do data encryption on infrastructure as a service using file system level encryption. This is readily available on Linux. We do have BitLocker on Windows, but for software, we do not have anything ready. So it may be a good idea to work on.
Can we list the available security functions that are already available in the cloud? For instance, we mentioned URL filtering.
Oh yes, spam, URL filtering, even firewall with Zscaler. Well, you could basically find everything, even cryptography, of course, authentication. You can authenticate with Facebook, so you can do that on the cloud. Basically, everything is available on the cloud. Now it's a matter of trust. And the trust needs are not the same if you are basically, again, my mother, poor mother, authenticating to her Salesforce, if she has one, compared to a real organization, a business like Total or Thales, or someone who in a sensitive industry authenticating on his core servers, for example.
Should there be some limits? Because when you put everything in the cloud, you can also put your own network vulnerability.
It's a single point of failure. No, what I mean is you actually externalize your vulnerabilities. Okay, you're not confident into your infrastructure. You think it's crappy. It has a lot of vulnerabilities, etc. So you say, I'm going to put that into Amazon. It's going to be better. Maybe it's going to be better, but actually you're externalizing your vulnerabilities. So it depends on how much you trust Amazon. The thing is, Amazon is, when I say that, is your provider is a single point of failure because it is sharing his infrastructure with a lot of customers. He is also very exposed. A lot of hackers, probably much more than the one who are targeting you, are targeting this cloud provider. So if it falls, it's pretty, it hurts.
Pascal?
Yeah, all those trends have, of course, at the infrastructure level, you'll find a number of things to secure your infrastructure, so file encryption, firewalls or whatever. This being said, as soon as you're talking about those type of environments, you're also talking about revisiting your application themselves. I'll take an example. Currently, all our kids are playing with Facebook, and such social networks will be widely used in the industry tomorrow. But those things are not at the level, typically in terms of authorizations, filtering of information, storage of information, etc., at the level an enterprise, and especially a bank, an army, or whatever, is necessary. So there is, even at that level, a lot of work which is being done in order to provide a level of safeness of those applications, which is necessary. I'm thinking about the whole field of content-based security, for example, which becomes very, very necessary as soon as you're talking about massive collaboration, and that's where stuff like the SAML effort, etc., becomes very important as a step towards privacy control over the net, etc., etc.
Yes, well, what I would say on this topic is that the key is open standards. I think we all agree on that. And for us in OW2, the key is also that open source best implement the open standards. So I think we must do efforts on implementation of open standards, on security standards. Some years ago, security was the secret, the black box, and now we all know that a black box is not secure. We should open, we should be visible to better hide, I think.
Okay, I would like to let also some questions regarding the room. If you have questions, please raise your hand, they will arrive. And yes.
I have a question. Do you think that Europe is in advance on security and privacy issues because of its regulation and the Commission work, or good technology? And if so, what would be the open source strategy would be the way to spread this advance if Europe has one?
Well, this is really a personal advice, but fundamentally, the European structure is a nightmare. Let's put it straight. For example, in France, you have a company which has been doing a lot of things which are very, very valuable, which is called Dictao, which is doing signing servers. Signing servers have to be certified one country after the other in Europe. Just imagine what it means. Just to take this simple example. Not to mention, for example, the failure in European clouds, which is currently obvious, etc., etc. So typically, it happens that I'm a bit involved into that, and I'm really, this is a place where there is a hell of a work to be done in order to make it doable, to make it to ease to have worldwide class software, which is not the case for the moment.
I think that, let's say, just to add that on the positive side, the upcoming regulation, the GDPR from the European Union, is going in the right direction. It will make things much more easier for, let's say, a citizen, a company, to be compliant with the upcoming regulation, because it will be a regulation, same rule for everyone within the European Union. But we're still perhaps a little bit late, but things are moving in the right direction. And at the same, moving back to Claude, at the European Union level, we do have the ENISA, we do have the Secure Cloud Initiative, who is, let's say, working in the same direction. Let's say, defining one set of rules for, let's say, trusted cloud computing services at the European Union level. It will take time to be finalized, to be implemented, but we do have in hand what need to be, what we need to get started with.
We have a question?
Yes, Dennis Caramel from Activion. So, for company wishing to go for hybrid cloud solution, the issue of connecting the private data center, the private cloud, with the public cloud seems to be a big issue. So there are solutions allowing to have a private network connection between the data center and the public cloud. So for instance, Orange is doing something called a VPN gallery, I think, allowing to connect your company data center with Microsoft data center, Azure in a private manner. So is that the solution? And what do you feel there are still risks and challenges with respect to security provided company use this kind of private network?
I think that there is not, let's say, one single solution. We need to have multiple solutions. So you spoke about VPN gallery. Yes, we do propose to our customer private direct interconnection between their own internal network and major cloud computing service providers, such as Microsoft, but also Salesforce and others. But this is not the only solution that our customers are asking for. For instance, let's say a lot of our customers are asking us, let's say, for to establish interconnection with cloud service provider over the internet using IPsec. Some of them are even using GRE, generic routing encapsulation. So no security, because they want to move fast. So in fact, we need to have a set of different, let's say, interconnectivity technology. It may be VPN, it may be IPsec, it may be whatever you want. But in fact, because each solution on each, let's say, requirement is really different. For instance, a private interconnection will do the job and will be from, let's say, a business standpoint, cost-effective if you are, let's say, interconnecting a major agency or a major site located in France. But let's say it will be extremely expensive to do so using a VPN connection for a remote location, I don't know, in somewhere in Africa, where for which the best solution will be to use IPsec.
So regarding Internet of Things, if we go further in the future now, do you expect some botnets with Internet of Things or smart cities being hacked, or even our hypothesis when we're getting older?
Well, yes. Unfortunately, yes. Internet of Things, you talked about distribution grids, for example, industrial, anything which is automated, a PLC is going to be a target. You were talking before about the opportunity for new companies into security. Certainly, Internet of Things and the industrial worlds are big opportunities, because if you want to jump into the security business now, most of the topics are not covered. You can improve, but someone is already working on it, and everybody is pretty self-conscious about the problems, issues, etc. If you're talking Internet of Things or industrial environments, well, we are at the level 0 of the security. Those people, they basically put firewalls in front of their infrastructure to avoid that the internal security people can reach their industrial environment. They don't want to have any interaction with the usual IT people and IT security people. They are level 0 of security. But there's a big topic here. There's probably something to build which is not that complex, which has not been thought before, only about visibility. You were talking about security operations center, just to have the visibility on what happens on those devices without trying to defend them at first, just knowing what happens. That's already something.
Monitoring.
And regarding the Internet of Things, I do agree with Clement. Let's say a lot of work, a lot of opportunities. I think that, let's say, Internet of Things, there are, let's say, some specific challenge here that we do not have in, let's say, regular cloud computing. Is we will have to find some, let's say, some solution to get around, let's say, really low resources in terms of CPU and RAM. This is a challenge because, let's say, for years we are getting used to have, let's say, gigabytes of RAM, really fast CPU. We do not have such kind of, let's say, resources for Internet of Things. First challenge. So it means that we need to, let's say, to find smart way to secure things, you know, in addition of, let's say, making it work for, let's say, for the core function. And another challenge here is, let's say, the Internet of Things. The things that are, let's say, will be small, will be simple, with, let's say, quite no or extremely poor interface, meaning that, let's say, we won't have any, let's say, nice interface to give to the end user in order for him to enter a new passphrase or secret password or whatever, or any configuration. We need to have some, let's say, key negotiation, auto-configuration capability being built inside the device, and that will be, let's say, that will be used to implement and to manage security on the, let's say, at the beginning when the device will be deployed, but that will be there also to manage security on the long run. And another topic is, let's say, firmware. How are we going to manage, let's say, security updates on the Internet of Things? This is a key, an interesting topic that needs to be addressed too.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for helping us road mapping this initiative about security at OW2. I think we can applaud.